people who happen to have a healthy metabolism live a lot longer. They don't develop heart disease and Alzheimer's and cancers and a slew of other problems nearly as commonly. And people have those, issues with the metabolism of their blood sugar and, inability of insulin to keep up. And as a consequence, lots of inflammation in the body, including in the liver. All those complications drive most of the healthcare expense, at least half of the healthcare expense of the country.
So that's very tightly linked to diet. And not exactly to caloric intake, but rather to type of diet.
Yes. And people who are overweight have trouble exercising. They don't sleep well. That's another a building block of your health. And oftentimes people overweight feel shame.
Yes. Well, we've made it a moral issue, and even my attitude towards that has shifted a lot in the last 10 years. When I see someone overweight now on the street, I would say probably 15 years ago, I was slightly more judgmental. I'm not a particularly judgmental person when it comes to people's health because it's generally very complicated. But it was easy enough to think, well, if they just exercised more and ate right, they'd do fine. And then I learned I learned many of the things that you just described, broadened my knowledge in that area and started to understand that these high carbohydrate diets were making people obese. And that was as simple as that. Well, I read a study at one point that suggested that one soda a day is sufficient to cause the obesity epidemic.
It's true. And let me explain. That's really important. You brought that up.
Yeah, well, that's nothing, right? That's not even much of a bad habit by all appearances.
160 calories.
Right.
That's not the problem. Your body is looking for nutrients. Your brain, very wisely, is disregarding caloric intake, only focusing on the nutrient density of what it's getting. Because that's what it uses to build muscle and hormones and brain and everything else. So when you take in a soft drink, your brain doesn't count that as food because it's not getting what it's looking for. And yet the calories still add on. And the high fructose corn syrup actually sort of stimulates a bunch of processes that are also maladaptive, but getting full, feeling satiated is not one of them.
Right.
And so we see this happening over and over again where small little errors reproduce every single day.
Yeah, well, that's the thing.
But the converse is also true. Small things, small steps done right every day, all of a sudden life's beautiful. And that's why it's so painful for me to see so many of my brethren, other Americans, feeling ill, thinking it's their fault and thinking there's no way out. The nihilism around health is stunning. And I'm laser focused on longevity, wellness issues, because there's so much opportunity there. Not just because we've got AI now that can customize recommendations for you, just exactly what you need, including when you hear the recommendation, because you're not always receptive equally. But we also have much better technologies that are available that can help you get on the right path. There's medications that in some instances make sense, but these are all crutches that fundamentally to get you to realize that you can do it, to empower you, the person whose ultimate destiny is so tied to your own will, which is, Jordan, why the messaging that you're delivering is so critical. Because if people don't think they matter, then they don't show up in their own lives. We have a kids foundation, which you've been incredibly helpful on, called Health Corps. It's based on the principle of the Peace Corps. So we go around the country with young college grads who, like the Peace Corps, would train them to do great things. Instead of sending them off to Botswana to build dams, you put them in schools in America. In fact, here in where we're taping in Arizona, the Department of Education has given Health Corps a $5 million grant to go into 100 schools and build digital platforms to deal with this issue that I just discussed. Fundamentally, here's the problem. We can't get young people to practice anymore for sports. We can't get them to do their math homework anymore. You can't get them to be respectful in class. Why? Because they don't think they matter. Think about your life. If you're listening, think about your childhood. Someone told you that showing up would change the world. That if you actually studied math or became a doctor, a nurse, a construction worker, a union person, if you did something with your life, that the world would be a better place for it. If you don't think that's true, Jordan, you're not going to do your homework in school. And you aren't going to go to practice because why would you bother?
Well, right.
And so what we try to do more than anything else is get young people to, first off, very narcissistically focus on themselves, their own bodies. You can be healthy, you can be cool, you can be, a better mate for someone in the future, a better employee in the future. But no matter what, you are important. You can do great good things, you can do terrible bad things, but what you do matters. So start focusing on what's in front of you. Show up in life by showing up in your school. So we're brought in to tell young people things through the lens of health that historically was told to them by their teachers and by their parents, or just by society at large, by messaging. Because culture eats strategy all day long. You got a strong culture, then you can make up for flaws in your strategy. But if you don't have a culture, who cares what you're being told to do? You're not.
Well, they're told the opposite now. I mean, they're really told, they're categorized by group, and that group can be, race, gender, sex, whatever. They're categorized by group. They're told that they're pawns of a tyrannical society and that they have absolutely no agency. And in the boys' case, they're also told that if they have any agency, that's nothing but a manifestation of a detrimental power drive, and that their play preferences are all wrong in school. And so I can't see how we could demoralize children more effectively if we'd set out to actually manage that. I read a study again not so long ago that showed, I think it was 43% of American youth feel that they had no agency in their life.
Yeah.
Well, that's a hell of a thing to think when you're 18.
Jordan, you go into the schools, and you've been kind enough to be supportive of health course. You may have witnessed this as well. You talk to a 17-year-old, and the light's gone out of their eyes. It's just blank darkness. They don't know what to think anymore. They have 15 different conflicting ideologies being thrown at them. None of them are going to help them deal with the challenge of their life. Imagine all of us had those issues when we were in high school. Somebody put their hand out and said, "Jordan, you can do this, man." It could have been the priest in your church. It could have been a coach, but someone helped a little bit. That's what we try to do with Health Corps. But there are other ways of getting that message out that aren't being used. And most importantly, we don't have the luxury of sitting back on our butts and wondering what happens next and complaining about this process. You need to pick up an oar and start rowing. And ideally, you get someone across the hull from you, so you're rowing in straight, not in circles. But it's a reality that it's like an epidemic taken over like a brain worm, our young people. But they don't want it. They know it's wrong. It doesn't take a lot when you sit in a room to get a young person to believe in themselves.
So what's Health Corps doing?
Well, as an example, we will teach you about the fundamentals of health. So what I just mentioned is an example about soft drinks. But how do you message that to a kid? If I lecture them like I just discussed these topics with you, I mean, they're not going to listen to me. I'm not cool to them. I don't culturally identify with, some of the subtle music tastes that they have. I don't get the jokes all the time. So ideally, someone who's close in age to them goes in there and say, "Hey, listen, the man wants to take advantage of you by selling you junk food that's not good for you. They know it's not good for you, but they're selling it to you because they make a lot of money. So don't be conned by the man." Now you got a little bit of a thing going on. It's me versus
counterculture.
Counterculture. Now it's sort of cool for me to reject junk food and vaping and cigarettes. I'm actually better than that. Now we actually study this in randomized trials. We've actually gotten data to show that it works. Young people know it's not good to drink soft drinks, and they don't drink as much soft drinks, especially when women. And then you've got to translate that to they perform better in life, which we're still studying. But someone's got to deliver the message to them. But that's the foundation. I use health as a crowbar to open them up, to get into their bodies, the thoughts that I think they need to hear about how valuable they are. Because if you're the most precious thing you're ever given by your family is seen by you as being worthwhile, all of a sudden you're worthwhile. Oh my goodness, I got this incredible body and I got all these opportunities. Now I'm going to start paying attention and maybe get past all these thoughts that they were racing in my head that were taking me in the wrong direction. And then we can use that as a excuse, a trampoline to develop mental resilience. Because what I really want to do is workforce development. I want to get these young people to believe that they can enter American culture and help. And if they have the mental resilience to recognize that if they can change what's happening in their body, Jordan, they can change the world outside of it. If they can actually get that idea in their heads, you can't stop them.